Before we start, a quick warning. If you ever find yourself walking alone in the woods and you notice something that doesn't make sense, footprints where there shouldn't be any, silence where there should be sound, leave immediately, because the people in these stories didn't, and every single one of them paid for it. Story 1: The Man I Never Heard. For this story to make sense, there's one important thing you need to know about me first. I'm hard of hearing. That means there are sounds I miss, footsteps behind me, branches snapping, someone breathing nearby. And because of that, there are moments from this story that still haunt me, simply because I'll never know what I failed to notice. This happened about a year ago, just after the holidays. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in southern Quebec, right where the houses stop and the forest begins. It's the kind of place where most people know each other and nothing exciting ever happens. I always found that comforting. In the winter, I regularly walk my dog Monty through the forest trails nearby. Monty is a Rottweiler Husky mix, big, fast, and extremely protective. One afternoon in February, after eating a late lunch, I decided to take him out. A fresh layer of snow had fallen overnight, covering the trails almost completely. It was quiet. Too quiet. I let Monty off the leash like usual. I noticed some boot prints and dog markings in the snow, which told me a few people had already been there earlier, but by this time of day, most people were home. The sun sets early in winter. About 30 minutes into the walk, we reached a fork in the trail. One path was clearly used. The other was completely untouched. Against my better judgment, I chose the untouched path. I knew these trails well and wasn't worried. The path led to a clearing where I planned to use the binoculars I'd gotten for Christmas to look for birds. That's when I noticed something that didn't belong. Near the tree line, partially hidden by snow, was a strange shape. When I raised my binoculars, my stomach dropped. A blue tarp, a makeshift shelter. Someone was living out there. I thought about checking it out, but the sun was already sinking, and something about the shelter made me uncomfortable, so I turned around. That's when Monty's behavior changed. He became alert. His posture stiffened and he started sniffing the ground non-stop. Then I saw the footprints. They were fresh, and they were huge, much larger than mine. I compared them to my own boots, hoping I was mistaken. I wasn't. There were no other forks in the trail, which meant whoever made those footprints had walked past me, without me hearing them. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they passed while I was using the binoculars. Maybe I just didn't notice. But as the forest grew darker, Monty suddenly stopped. He spun around and began barking violently, directly behind me. I turned around, and there he was, a man, standing less than 3 feet away. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with charcoal-colored snow pants and a white camouflage jacket. His hands were buried deep in his coat pockets. He didn't flinch. He didn't step back. He just stood there. His lips were moving, but I couldn't hear him. The light was too low to read his mouth, and I couldn't tell if he was speaking English or French. I suddenly realized I hadn't brought my phone. I gestured awkwardly, trying to explain that I was hard of hearing and that it was getting late. After what felt like forever, I managed to walk past him. He didn't follow, at least not then. I got home around 4:30 p.m., and by then it was completely dark. I tried to forget the encounter, until 3 a.m. I woke up to Monty licking my hand, the same way he wakes me up every morning. I checked my phone. 3 a.m. I had a message from my neighbor asking if everything was okay because Monty had been barking uncontrollably. That's when I realized Monty wasn't in my room anymore. I went downstairs and found him snarling at the patio door. As the motion sensor light turned on, my heart dropped. The man from the forest was standing in my backyard. I didn't hesitate. I backed away, texted 911, and ran upstairs with Monty, locked myself in my bedroom, and grabbed the machete I kept under my bed. I sat there in silence, heart pounding, until Monty suddenly jumped up and began barking at the bedroom door. A shadow appeared beneath it. Someone was standing right outside. I waited for the handle to turn. It never did. When police arrived, they found my patio door smashed and the gate leading to the forest wide open. The man was gone. I never heard from the police again, and I never walked in the woods after that.
I never used to be afraid of being home alone. Not as a kid, not even in that house. I thought the noises were just what old houses did, wood settling, pipes knocking. Until one night, the noise answered me back, and whatever was inside my wall knew my name. When I was 13, my parents worked night shifts. My dad at a warehouse, my mom at a hospital. They left every night at 7, didn't come back until almost 2 in the morning. That meant I spent most nights completely alone in our house. It wasn't a scary place, just old, rented, the kind of house with thin walls and uneven floors. At first, the noises didn't bother me. Creaks, taps, the occasional bang when the heat kicked on. I'd sit in my room with headphones on, playing games, waiting for time to pass. That's why I ignored it the first time I heard the knocking. It came from the wall behind my bed. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. I froze. The knocking stopped the moment I turned my head. I waited. Nothing. So I told myself it was just the pipes. But pipes don't stop when you listen. The next night it happened again. Same wall, same 3 knocks. I whispered, "Hello?" Silence. And that's when the knocking moved. Over the next week, the sound followed me. If I sat at my desk, it came from behind the chair. If I laid in bed, it came from beneath the floor. Always 3 knocks, always stopping when I listened. Then, one night, the knocking was replaced by something worse. Breathing, right behind the wall. At first, I thought it was my own breath echoing, so I held my breath. The breathing stopped too. When I breathed again, so did it. I started sleeping with the lights on. That didn't help. One afternoon, while cleaning my room, I moved the wardrobe. That's when I saw the marks. Long scratches, deep, too deep to be accidental. The wallpaper behind it was warm. I pressed my palm against it. The wall moved. That's when I noticed the outline. A small door, hidden, sealed, painted over again and again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the door opened by itself. Darkness spilled out. Not empty darkness, thick, alive. Then a voice whispered from inside, "You finally noticed." It sounded exactly like me. The thing started calling my name, then my mom's, then my dad's. "Come inside," it said. "They already left you here." The door began breathing, fast, desperate. Something moved in the dark, reaching. I ran. I didn't grab anything. I didn't look back. I ran outside barefoot and sat on the porch until morning. When my parents came home, I told them everything. They laughed. There was no door, no scratches, no warm wall. The wardrobe hadn't been moved. Years later, the house was demolished. Out of curiosity, I visited the site. One worker recognized the address. He told me they found something strange, a sealed crawl space inside the wall. Inside it, words carved over and over, "I'm still here." I tried to forget about it after that. For a long time, I actually did. I moved houses, changed cities, got older. I told myself it was just a kid's imagination mixed with an old house and loneliness. That explanation worked until last winter. I was staying alone in my apartment one night, scrolling on my phone, when I heard it. 3 knocks. Not on the door, behind the wall. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The breathing started again, perfectly timed, with mine. I stood up slowly and pressed my ear against the wall. It was warm. And just beneath the paint, I could feel it moving. Then a whisper slid through the wall. "You noticed again." I didn't run this time. I didn't scream. I backed away and left the apartment. I never went back. I don't think it was ever attached to the house. I think it was waiting. And every place I live now builds itself around it.
The snow outside my window wasn't untouched. Winter always made our town quieter, not peaceful, just empty. When it snowed, everything felt paused. Roads disappeared. Sounds were swallowed. Even the wind felt careful, like it didn't want to disturb something. That winter, my parents left town for 3 nights to attend a funeral. I was 17, old enough to stay home alone. We lived on the edge of town, where streetlights stopped and the forest began. The first night, the snow started just after sunset. By midnight, it was falling thick and heavy, coating the world in white. I remember standing by my bedroom window, looking down at the yard. It was smooth, perfect. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. I went to bed around 1 in the morning. Sometime later, I woke up because the house felt louder. Not from sound, but from silence. Snow does that. It presses against the walls, suffocates the outside world. When I sat up in bed, the quiet was so deep it made my ears ring. Then I heard it, a soft crunch. Not close, outside. I got up and walked to the window. The yard wasn't smooth anymore. A single line of footprints crossed the snow, from the trees straight to beneath my window. They stopped there. No return trail. I stood frozen, staring down, telling myself it had to be an animal. But animals don't walk in straight lines, and they don't stand still long enough to leave prints that deep. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The second day, the storm got worse. Snow piled up against the doors. My phone lost signal. The power flickered but stayed on. I shoveled the front steps and tried not to look at the tree line. By evening, the footprints were gone, buried under fresh snow. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. That night, I locked my bedroom door. Around 2:40 a.m., I heard the crunching again, closer this time. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening as the sound moved slowly through the yard, step by step, careful, unhurried. Then it stopped, directly below my window. Something tapped the glass. Not a knock, a fingernail. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My body felt locked in place. After a long moment, the tapping stopped. I waited for footsteps. None came. When morning arrived, I forced myself to look outside. There were footprints again. This time there were 2 sets, one leading from the forest to my window, and one leading from my front door back to the forest. I convinced myself someone had tried to break in and failed. That explanation was thin, but it was better than the alternative forming in my head. The third night was the coldest. The power went out around midnight. The house dropped into darkness and the temperature fell fast. I wrapped myself in blankets and sat on my bed, phone flashlight on, listening to the wind scream outside. Then I heard footsteps inside the house. Slow, heavy, wet, moving across the living room floor. I held my phone tighter, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The steps stopped outside my bedroom door. Something leaned against it. I could hear breathing on the other side. Not fast, not angry, patient. Then a voice whispered, soft and calm, "I walked all this way. You can at least let me warm up." I screamed. The sound tore out of me, raw and desperate. The breathing stopped instantly. So did the pressure against the door. I stayed there until sunlight creeped through my window. When my parents returned later that morning, the storm had finally passed. Roads were clear, power was back. They found me sitting on the bed, still wrapped in blankets. I told them everything. My dad went outside to check the snow. He came back pale. He said there were footprints leading to the house, but none leading away. We moved that spring. Years have passed since then, but every winter when fresh snow falls and the world goes quiet, I look outside my window before going to bed. Because untouched snow doesn't mean no one's been there. Sometimes they're just standing perfectly still right below the window, waiting for the light to turn off.